This is my very good evening to you all. Koilo Sheshanas Yaakov. Welcome and thank you for having me again. Though I'm quite touched that you wanted to hear me again after last time. This is Lili Nishma Shoshana Bas Yitzchok Sholem, which I like to announce beforehand so that the neshama gets all the benefits. Turning fast days into holidays. Why? So you'll tell me, what do you mean by turning fast days into holidays? The Rambam writes about the 4 major fast days, which remember sad happenings, at the end of the laws of fast days, which appears in his book of Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, which, as you know, is the major work of the Rambam, and he writes as follows: Kal hatzoimes ha'elu. If you're following me from the right here at the top, this is the very last law in the end of chapter 5. Kal hatzoimes ha'elu. All these fasts, asidin libotel, are one day destined to become annulled. When? Limeis HaMashiach, when Mashiach will come. V'loi oid, and not only that, ela, furthermore, sheheim asidin, they are all destined liyos yomim tovim, to become a Yom Tov. V'yemei sasoin v'simcha, days of joy and rejoicing and happiness. Shenema, if you want to know where I get this from, it's a pasuk in Zechariah chapter 8. Koi Amar Shem Tov, so says the Almighty Lord of Hosts. Soim Haravi, the fast of the 4th month, and we are counting the months from Nisan. So Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz. That's the same Haravi will be the fast which is coming up this week. That's Shivas of Tammuz. V'tzoim HaChamishi, the fast of the 5th month. That will be the fast of Av, which is Tisha B'Av. V'tzoim HaShavi, and the fast of the 7th month, which is Tzom Gedalia. V'tzoim HaAsiri, and the fast of the 10th month, which is Asara B'Teves. Those 4 fasts, Yiyeh Lebeis Yehuda, will be for the house of Judah. L'sasein u'lesimcha, for rejoicing and for happiness, u'lemoedim tovim, and for good times, for good, like a moed, like a Yom Tov, v'ha'emes v'ha'shalom ehovu, and the truth and the peace will love each other. In other words, these fasts will become into Yom Tovs. Now, I would imagine that if Mashiach comes, the Beis HaMikdash is rebuilt, there's no need to have a fast day for the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And all these fast days are connected one way or the other with the Churban Beis HaMikdash. So if that's the case, the Tzom HaRevi, Tzom HaChamishi, Tzom HaShvi, Tzom HaSi will become days of what? Or they'll become nullified. That's what I would have thought. The question is, why do they not become regular days? Why do we say, why does the Torah promise that they will become festival days? If it was a bad day, it's cancelled. It becomes a regular day. Why the upgrade to becoming a Yom Tov? So in other words, we will celebrate, and who knows, Mashiach will come within the next few days, the next few hours maybe. Is firstly, we'll have back Shoshana, Be'ezus Hashem, because all those that dwell in the earth will be awakened and they will sing praise to the Eibishter. And secondly, we won't have to fast on Shivas of Tammuz. There is a question brought down in the Achronim, when if you started fasting on Shivas of Tammuz and Mashiach came during the day, whether you have to complete the tainus or not. Because on the one hand, it's a tainus which has been accepted by the entire people of Israel. So it's because of a very fixed status. So you ought to really complete it. But on the other hand, it's understood that this tainus is only when Mashiach hasn't come. So maybe it was written into the conditions of the tainus, and when Mashiach will come, we won't have to fast anymore. So maybe we could quit in the middle of the fast day. In where I am in Sheffield, the fast goes out very late at night. If we 10:30, 11 at night. So I don't mind if Mashiach comes early on in Shivas with Tammuz, because then I can.
Here at 11 o'clock is later.
Yeah.
So,
so this is the question. Why can they not become regulated? Why must they be turned into the may sosim v'simcha or moedim tovim may sosim v'simcha? Why does that have to be?
Rabbi Golomb,
Yeah.
surely there's another question. If you're saying that we're fasting for the destruction of the temple, the temples were still destructed, so why not continue with the fast on those days anyway? Because we are still living. I know that the temple will be rebuilt, but we are now fasting for the destruction of those temples. So we should keep on reminding ourselves of that and therefore continue to fast rather than celebrate.
I see. I get your question. It's a good question then. The reason why we fast on a fast day is not as some sort of memorial service to the destroyed temples. The reason we fast is an act of teshuvah to bring us closer to rebuilding it. It therefore stands to reason that if the Beis Hamikdash has been rebuilt, we've done sufficient teshuvah to bring us to correct the cause of the destruction in the first place, and it would obfuscate the need to fast any further. The only problem is that since there's a sort of a pseudo neder involved. You've given your word that you'll fast. I never gave my word. I said, well, by going along with what the minhag is, it's as if you committed yourself to fast the whole day. And therefore, there were some that argue you need to complete the fast on those grounds. The answer to this is going to take me on a little bit of a journey. And I would say this goes back to the very nature of creation. And I would invite you to become a little bit of a Kabbalist. This is what the Kabbalists call Shviras HaKelim, the destruction of the vessels. When the Almighty first created the world, Kadosh Baruch Hu makes the world. God is everywhere. God is like a brilliant presence, a very bright light. Whatever he will create just won't be visible. It's like trying to read your mobile phone when it's very, very bright sunshine. You cannot see the letters because the brightness of the sunshine blots out the brightness of this very little mobile phone. When it's in your bedroom at the middle of the night and a text comes through and the whole phone lights up, the whole room lights up because it's very dark. So in the presence of a bright light, the small light is not noticeable. Says the Gemara. A little candle in broad daylight, what use is it? In a spiritual sense, when the Eibishter is present, there's nothing else that can exist because it will just be blasted out of existence by the presence of the Eibishter, the presence of God. So says the Zohar, the Sifrei Kabbalah, the Kisvei Arizal, when the Eibishter first created the world, Silek Shchinosai, he removed his presence. Obviously it's there, but it's hidden. So he created like a black hole, not a physical black hole, a spiritual black hole, that there's no presence of divine creation there at all. This is similar, to use a moshel, a parable. If you're thinking about a certain subject, you're trying to find a solution to a complicated mathematical problem, you will find that people who are really, really involved in it, they will shut the windows. They don't want to talk to people. They'll turn off their phones. They'll make sure there's not, because they need to focus. They need to empty their minds of anything else so they can focus on this particular question. And it is anything that you want to focus on, you want to concentrate on, you need to clear the space in your mind. You say, what space? If I look in your mind, am I going to see black holes? Of course not. You mean mental space. So we have this concept of there being a space which doesn't involve physical acreage or meters or centimeters. It involves a sense of spirit which has been removed and allowed the presence of something smaller, which is not so great, to exist. Then God began to create little things, which in comparison to the Eibishter was like nothing in his presence. Imagine, all he has to do, he says, no, let there be this, let there be that, and it's all there. For the Eibishter, even that doesn't represent even anything that is lefi erech, comparable to his abilities, because it's about as mind-boggling as a famous professor would draw a dot on a piece of paper. You'd say, well, That doesn't represent what this famous professor is capable of producing. I say, well, when you see the entire universe, that doesn't represent anything about what God is capable of doing. So God creates this vacuum, this black hole, this spiritual absence of his Shekhinah, of his presence. And in there, he creates a little something which is much more reduced. There's no divine presence there, and it allows us to exist, the world to exist. And there are tens of thousands of levels between what he starts off as something very divine to something as physical as we have to gain the physical world. However, in the course of that creation, there were certain divine qualities that God brought down to this world that the world was unable to receive. And that's what we call Shaviras HaKelim. The vessels broke, meaning the divine reception, they're able to receive God's divine presence. It was too much for them. This is similar to if you have very hot water and you put it in very delicate vases or very delicate glasses, it's too much for the glass and it breaks and it shatters. The Jewish people went through a similar event at Matan Torah. When Moses went speaking to God, he was able to receive it. When the Eibishter spoke to the people, it was too much for them. They died. And the Eibishter had to sprinkle Tal Tichya, says the Medrash, the Jew that brings back to life. He had to sprinkle that over the Jewish people to bring him back to life again. That's when he said the first of the 10 commandments. And when he said the second of the 10 commandments, the same thing happened again. The Jewish people expired, died, and God had to bring them back to life again. He was about to say the third of the 10 commandments, and the Jewish people said, whoa, twice is enough. We get the point. Thank you. We won't question your presence anymore or your existence. From now on, we know you talk to Moshe, and whatever Moshe says, we know is coming from you until we get an email to the contrary. So this is the Shaviras HaKelim. And what happened when God created the world is that the divine presence split up into tiny little bits of sparks of holiness that is throughout the world. All over the world are these sparks of holiness. Some of them get caught in ways which we are able to, if you like, use them and bring them to the fore, elevate them so they should become visible, and some are not. So let's talk about practical things. Let's veer away from the Kabbalistic description of how things happened at the beginning of Ma'aser Bereshis and talk about some practical things. I think you might recognize some of these things. Have you ever lost something precious? Perhaps a watch you've had for 30 years, and one day you look on your wrist and you're in a shopping mall somewhere in the middle of Amsterdam, and bang, it's gone. And you think, what's happened to my watch? I'm like, oh, it's gone. It's gone. Finished. You retrace your steps. It's gone. I've had this watch for 30 years. My mother gave it to me, and now it's gone. So what does a person naturally feel? Feels a sense of loss. You missed that watch, but it's gone. Sometimes you might have a watch that broke and is now beyond repair. You take it to a watchmaker, and he says, I'm sorry, this is broken out. I can't get a part. Forget it. Throw it away. It's not worth fixing. So it's gone. Now, you might have a similar thing, not with regards to objects. You might find that you go to a home. You're buying a house for the first time. A flat, house, whatever it may be. You probably saw a number of different homes, and one of them you got a good feeling you like this place. Could you put your finger on exactly what you liked about it? No, you just got a good feeling. I think you're buying a house. This isn't a watch. This is a very big purchase, probably the biggest purchase a regular couple will ever make in their lifetime. So how can you run that on a good feeling? Obviously, there'll be certain characteristics. There may be many houses that fit into those characteristics. But one of them, you'll say, I like the feeling of this one. Right? You met your spouse. I say first spouse, so hopefully your only spouse. But when you met your spouse and you decided this was somebody I want to be interested in, what was it that convinced you to start dating or to go out on the shidduch? So you'll say, well, it was kind of a mutual feeling. We kind of got on together. So come on, this is your wife you're talking about. Have you got anything more concrete than just a good feeling? How did these good feelings work? How can you rely on them? Have you ever driven to somewhere and got lost? It's happened to me. Now, I know in the days before GPS, I'm one of those people that I like to work out my map in advance. Before I gave in and used GPS on my phone, I never ask anybody how to get anywhere. I look at my map, I memorize the roads, I have a good sense of direction, and most of the time it worked, but not all of the time. On occasions, I found myself going down a country road with that feeling, this isn't taking me where I need to be. I'm getting lost. So what do? You finally give in. I'm an alpha male. I don't like asking people that. But you give in and you stop somebody and say, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to da? And he says, yeah, you go down right. You down right the corner, turn left, go down 2 blocks, turn right. So you do that and you can't remember, was it 2 blocks or 3 blocks? You get even further lost. And at some point, if you're like me, you get frustrated because they feel that you're lost. I was driving to Phillips Park Cemetery in Manchester. I also didn't know where I was going. But this time I put on my GPS and it drove me, I was going to a funeral. And it drives, turn right, turn left, turn this, turn that. And finally I get to this outside of Phillips Park Cemetery, Bay Salem. And the GPS says, you have reached your final destination. And I thought, charming, that's very nice. What about food and drink? Another practical question. What do you like to eat and what do you like to drink? Some of you will have a sweet tooth and some prefer spicy, savory things. How can you explain that? Why was one person like one thing or some person like something else? Within each of the foods, in the sweet tooth or the savory tooth, you will find certain foods that you like and others don't like. Why? You might like certain objects, certain collections. There's a woman locally in Sheffield who collects Wedgwood porcelain. She has whole glass cabinets full of it. I asked her, I said, what do you see in this? To me, it's just cups and saucers, tiny teapots, and little bits and pieces. I didn't see the colors as overwhelming. Wedgwood has got this sort of pale blue look to it. She says, oh, I get a buzz. I feel something in the art and the presence of this. Again, like the foods. Why do you like this? You don't like that? I can't stand spaghetti. My kids, they love it. Give me a piece of spaghetti, makes me gag. I don't know why. People like certain things, they don't like others. How can you explain these things? Some drive a Mercedes. Others wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. It's a German car. So some people feel a connection to it, some people don't. Can you explain that? That's another example of things you might like or dislike. So what decrees your likes and your dislikes? What makes you decide you like something or you don't like something? There may be scientific reasons behind things, but we Jews don't run according to science. We know we don't run according to science because there are certain things which are good for us and certain things which are bad for us. And for the rest of the world, for the non-Jewish world, it makes no difference. But for us, it does. And we feel good when we keep Shabbos. And for the rest of the world, it makes no difference in whether they mow the lawn on the Saturday morning or not. Explain the mystics, the Kabbalists, the people who study the hidden and deeper meaning behind things. That in every material object, in every place, and in every person, there's a certain design of those spiritual sparks that got scattered when the Eibishter created the world. A nitzutz eliki, a godly spark. This nitzutz eliki is more than just present there. It's what keeps it alive. It keeps it in existence. Nothing can exist without God having some sort of energy inside it. You may not see that energy, you may not feel it, but it cannot exist without it. If you have one stone that exists without a nitzutz eliki, the question is, where does that stone come from? How does it exist if there's nothing in there that keeps it in existence? In fact, we say in davening, The Eibishter renews every day, Tomid, constantly, Ma'aseh Bereshis. I don't know what it's like with LED bulbs or neon lights, but the old-fashioned light bulbs worked on a current of 50 volts. There was actually AC, alternating current. So the current was going in and out 50 times a second. Now, when you look at a bulb, you see a light and you think that light is on the whole time. It isn't. The light itself has no independent ability. It's fired by a current which is going through that bulb. It keeps it going the whole time. When the Russians, many of whom were peasant soldiers, conquered Berlin, many of them discovered light bulbs for the first time. And they were witnessed unscrewing these light bulbs, putting them very carefully into their bags and taking them home, thinking this bulb is a light bulb. So I'm going to take it home. I'll have light back in my hut somewhere in the middle of the Carpathian Mountains. Of course, they didn't realize the bulb itself is useless without the current going through it. All physical material has current going through it, even a stone. That current is the nitzot tzadiki which keeps it alive. The nitzot tzadiki in a stone is very tiny. In something that grows, semech is a little bit more. In animals, it's even more. There's something akin to a soul. But when you get to human beings, that's when you get a proper neshama. And within the neshamas, you get a difference between a Jew and lahavdil, a non-Jew. A non-Jew has a non-Jewish soul, and a Jid has a Jewish soul. And that's another subject to discuss about that, but not for now. So everything has this nitzah tzadiki which flows through it and keeps it in existence. Incidentally, these nitzah tzadiki are the products of the various letters that we find in the Asara Mamoris mentioned yesterday in Pirkei Avos, with which God created the world. Many of them by permutations of letters with letters and gematrias, and one letter before, one letter after. But the entire creation is in those few psukim that are mentioned at the beginning of Bereshis. And that is the divine energies made up of these letters. And we find an interesting thing. Adam was asked to name the animals. And so God brought before him all the animals. Whatever the Almighty called this particular, whatever Adam called this particular object or person or animal, this is what was its name. So you say, well, how does Adam know that a lion is to be called an Ari? And he said very simply, Adam was a very holy man. He was the Yitzir Kapov Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was the creation of the Almighty's hands himself, so he was perfect. And God gave him the ability to understand and see the spirit. So he could look at a lion and he could say, the creation of the lion is a combination of the letters Aleph, Reish, and Yud. And the Aleph is first, the Reish is second, and the Yud is third. And these particular dots, which are the vowels, and altogether makes the word Ari. So I can see that is the person, that animal's name is Ari. So every single name in Lashon HaKodesh is actually like a, like they're having in chemistry, they have like a code for CO2. It's a code which tells you what the elements are, what the properties are, what the chemicals are. So too, the letters of a name of all objects in Lashon HaKodesh is like a code which tells you the divine energies that go into making that particular person, object, or animal, or whatever it may be. A Jew also has a similar makeup. The neshama of a Jew is very intricate. If you read the Shara Gilgul from Chaim Vital, you'll see that neshamas are made up of hundreds and hundreds of different, bringing together madrigas and this and that and the other. In a simple sense, you can see you are the product of 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, 32 great-great-great, and so on. All of those feed into you. So too in the neshamas, you've got lots of things that feed into making that particular neshama that is you. So when it comes to choosing a name, You have to have a name which matches the ruchnius, the spiritual makeup of that neshama. So the Gemara therefore says, when you choose a name for your children, you should choose a good name. Because if you choose a good name, it causes him good things. If you choose a bad name, it has a negative impact. So you'll say, okay, in the times of the Gemara, maybe they could work these things out. But how am I supposed to know such things? So the Arizal writes an interesting thing. The Arizal writes that when parents are choosing a name for their child, they are given a spirit of nevuah. I'm not a full-time prophet, but at least when I had my children, I had a little bit of nevuah to choose. We, my wife and I, to choose the names of our children. And you get a particular feeling. You often find by parents, I just wanted to name him this, I wanted to name him that. And I had an uncle, he died young. I went, why all of a sudden you had this uncle? Yeah, I don't know. I had a feeling I wanted to name after this uncle. Everybody could tell stories about names and why they chose names. And often I find that parents, years later, they can't exactly remember why they chose that name anymore. They just know that they had a reason for that, and they like that name. Why is that name given to you? Because that name is what matches that neshama. So you can see there's a big relationship between the divine energy, the divine makeup, the divine DNA, which goes into creating everything, and the material that is created as a result of it. This is what keeps the thing alive. Therefore, explains the Arizal, La'olam Hashem devarchav nitzav bashomoyim. It's a pasuk in Tehillim chapter 119 under the letter Lamed. La'olam Hashem, forever, God. Devarcha, your words, nitzav, are still standing in Shomayim, bashomoyim, in the heavens. So the simple meaning of the verse is that the words that God says, let there be, are not like my speech. When I say it, it's lost. But when God says something, his words are still material. They're still there. The deeper meaning of this, says Arizal, is that the words God used, the Hebrew letters and vowels and combinations to create the world, are still embedded in every single aspect of the world. So the word Evan is a stone, and it's what keeps alive billions of stones all over the world. And every single thing must have this divine concept, this divine quality, this divine energy that keeps it in existence. If God was to remove that for a minute, the object would cease to exist. Like if I turned off the light switch on the wall, what's going to happen to the light? Will it fall on the floor? No, it simply is out. It ceases to exist. The whole light is being fed by the current in the filament or inside the LED. The moment you switch off the current, the light's gone, finished, nothing left. It's a bit like another moshel. If you take a tennis ball and you take a racket and you hit that tennis ball in the air vertically, the tennis ball will fly and fly and fly. But at some point, the energy will be used up, and what will happen? The tennis ball will stop and return back to earth where it came from. What happened? Because the energy that was keeping it aloft did not turn the ball into a flying ball. It gave it energy that was able to fly as long as the energy was there. The moment the energy is used up, it goes back to earth and to what it was, a non-flying ball. So the natural state of the universe is non-existence. It doesn't have any independent existence. When the Eibishter created it, he makes the world able to exist as long as it keeps that energy going. Turn off the switch and it vanishes. So sometimes you ask a group of kids, if God was to destroy the world again, what would he do? He said there's no floods anymore. So what could it? Well, one kid will tell you nuclear bomb, another will say a very big fire, a third will tell you a pandemic. Or if God wanted to destroy the world, God forbid, all they had to do is stop creating it. There wouldn't even be a pile of ash. There's nothing there. It's gone. Like the light that's switched off. It's finished. Nothing there. So God is keeping alive the world the whole time. These are these nitzut tzadikim that are scattered throughout the universe. Now, within those, you have to know your sparks. You have to know what sparks are there and what sparks are to be used and what sparks are not to be used. Some are available for use, others are not. This is the notion of asur and mutter. You've heard of those terms in Hebrew. Asur means forbidden and mutter means permitted. And I'll come to that in a second. Come back to those words. Okay. You know, when we talk about kosher food, we call it as kosher. That's the good food. And what do we call the non-kosher food? We call it treif. The word treif is really not correct. There are three types of meat that can be invalid for any one of three reasons. And one of those is treif, the other two isn't. There are three specific terms: treifa, nevela, and tamea. So a chazer is not treifa, neither is it nevela. It is a tamea. It is a species that's impure, and therefore we don't attempt to shecht it, and we don't attempt to eat it. Then nevela would be an animal that is indeed available for us to eat, but instead of us shechting it in the normal way, the animal died, or was shechted incorrectly, so it died not in the proper way, but it died through alternative means. That's called the nevela. And the third way is treifa, which means that something which was shechted correctly, it's a species I'm allowed to eat, but when I examined the inner sides of the animal, I found something which was torn. So those are the specifics. However, in normal parlance, I'm sure it's the same in Holland, wherever you go, people say this is kosher, and also it's treif. That you don't have that, it's treif. But what we mean is it's not allowed, it's not permitted. But there are generic terms. Something which is permitted, I would use the term mutter, and something which is forbidden is called asur. What do those words actually mean? Mutter means untied, and asur means tied. And they are specific because something which is, I got that nitzur tzadikim, but I am unable to elevate it to something better, is asur, it's tied. And God says to me, don't touch that. Don't eat that food because it's asur. It's tied to something which is not able, you are unable to untie it and bring it to Kedusha. That's why God says, don't eat that and don't eat that. What would be a context of this? If I eat kosher meat and I have a kosher cup of wine, and from the physical energy that I get from the meat and from the wine, I'm able to daven, I'm able to learn Torah, I'm able to sit with a group of people in Amsterdam and learn Torah. All of that takes the energy I receive from these things and elevates it to Kedusha. I'm extracting the nitzot, the godly term, because I'm using it for godly things. If, God forbid, a Jew would eat basar, which is not kosher, or drink wine, which is not kosher, then even if that person would daven and learn and give shiurim with the energy received from that food, it won't take the Kedusha upwards. It won't elevate that nitzos back to its former source. That's why God says, don't touch that. You shouldn't do that. That's asur. That's tied. It's locked. It's padlocked to forces that are not good. You won't be able to elevate it. This is the terms asur and mutter, mean tied and untied. So basically, anything which is mutter means it's untied. Use it for good, you've elevated it. Use it for bad, you've not elevated it. Which is incidentally why the body has to be buried after person's lifetime, because the body being buried is a form of purification. So if there's anything in the body which was not used correctly, it is removed from the body, it is eroded from the body, and therefore the body is allowed to becomes tahor as a result of it. By tsadikim, very pious people who did not ever eat or drink or do anything which was not for the Shem Shamayim, for the sake of heaven, then their body remains whole. And sometimes we do come across very pious people, the bodies are whole. There's an organization that has been going around Eastern Europe rescuing cemeteries. I remember speaking to one of them a long time ago, many years ago, and he says sometimes they'll have to remove the bodies from a cemetery because the government's not interested. They're paving over it, they're building a shopping mall, they're building a motorway, so they have no choice but to move all the bodies elsewhere. He said most of the time what we're moving is bones or very little left. Every now and then we'll come across a grave where there's a complete body there. He says, as soon as we know that, we realize that we're here in the presence of a very holy person, and everybody stops what they're doing, and they have a whole procedure of how they do this. Because of a person who's very holy, his body is not peppered with anything which is osur, and therefore doesn't need to be refined in the earth. So this is why Hashem says to eat or not to eat, based on whether you'll be able to extract the holiness, or it's not possible for us to do so. I've got more to say on that. I'm looking at the time. So now we come to the more individual things. The sparks of holiness, which are connected to your soul, attract you to that object or that food or that car or whatever it may be. Every single thing in the world has sparks of holiness. They match up with your neshama. And you are given these things in order to elevate all materials which you have for the sake of Hashem. So even the watch, the gold watch which your mother gave you 30 years ago, the purpose of that watch is for you to use it in Avodas Hashem, the serving of God. The way you would use it, it depends. If it's the time, or maybe it looks good, or whatever it is that you would use it for, usually for telling the time, I would presume. You could use it as a paperweight on something to keep your papers there. You would use it. But as you're using it, you're elevating the sparks in that watch to something higher, because you're using it l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. At some point, you will finish that. Hashem knows what your soul is like. He knows what particular things matches you and guides you there accordingly. And that is why you feel a certain drawing, a certain attraction to specific things. Because the sparks of holiness, which is in this food, is connected to your soul, and your soul wants that food. Therefore, your body reflects the way your soul feels and also desires that food. This is the spiritual dimension of why it is you like certain things and you don't like others. Let's have a little piece from Savory Harivosh. Savory Harivosh is a sefer written. There's quite a few versions of it. It literally means the last will and testimony of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem. This is about Shem Tov's sayings, which were written down. And he says this, everything that I've said here is contained in this version. He says, HaTorah Chosa, it's all right to read the Hebrew, and if you can follow, it would be good. But if not, I will still explain as we go along. HaTorah Chosa Mamonim Shel Yisrael. The Torah is particular not to waste the money belonging to Jewish people. But Lama Cain, why is that so? Kizeh Klal Gadol, because this is a general principle. Shekol Davar, that anything Sh'adam Lovesh that you wear, or oichel or eat, or mishtamish b'kei hahu, that you're using this particular vessel, nene me'achayis mesheyesh ba'isi davar. He benefits, or she benefits, from the life force which flows within that particular object. Ki lolei oisei ruchnius, were it not for that spiritual dimension, lo hayashum kiyum, there would be no establishment, there would be no existence, la oisei davar, to that thing. V'yesham nitzotzes kadoshes, within that are sparks which are holy, hashaychim the shoresh nishmosei, which are relevant to the source of your soul. Every soul is its own individual. Souls are as individual as people are. There are 7 billion people plus on this planet, and no two people are the same. V'shomati, and I heard, said the Baal Shem, Kizeh Tam. Well, that is the reason, Sheyesh Adam, that you will have a person, Shuhu Oivev Davar Zer, that he loves this particular thing, V'yesh Adam Shuhu Soide Davar Zer, and this another person absolutely dislikes it, V'oiv Davar Acher, and he likes something else. Uchashu Mishtamesh Ba'osikli, when a person uses that vessel, Oicha, or that food, me'acholim, of the foods, even though the reason he's eating it is for the body to benefit, nevertheless, Humasakein hanitzaitis, you are fixing, you're elevating those sparks. Ki achakach, because afterwards, you're able to serve God with that strength. Habala gufay, which has come to your body, malbush, either from the clothes you're wearing, or the food that you ate, or whatever else it may be. And with that energy, you can serve the Almighty, blessed be He. Nimtza hemusukonim. So that's how they become fixed. Lachein pa'amim yera. Therefore, it will happen. Sheyeved mimenu kol adaba hahu, that it will be lost from the person, that object, whatever it may be. Keshekola kvar lesakein, because when a person has finished fixing kol hanitzaitzin shahayu ba'osedava, all the sparks which are in that particular object, hashayach and the shodesh nishmasei, which are relevant to the source of your soul, then the Almighty, blessed be He, takes it away from him. What? Exactly that vessel, and gives it perhaps to another person. There's some versions of this sefer where it has the word nisharim. So he takes this kid and gives it to somebody else for whom it is relevant, those sparks which are left behind, but exactly in that vessel, the shodesh shalache to some to the source of the soul of somebody else. I can't see how to move that. Oh, there it is. But Amar Rivash, Olav Hashem, the Shem Tov used to say, Sha'ochlim b'nei Adam, people eat, v'yeshmim b'nei Adam, they sit with others, u'mishtamshim b'nei Adam, they use others, meaning, we're talking about the holiness which is in these things. And that's why a person should treat anything that he owns with respect, not because he's a miser or because he's very particular about the physical side of it. No, but because if you have it, it's a sign that's meant for you and you're supposed to elevate it. Anything that's yours. Because of the sparks which are in there, in those vessels, in order to be careful regarding the Holy Spirit, the Holy sparks which are in there. So, how do I move on? So, let me just move this out of the way. This is also the meaning of the psukim in Tehillim. You've got chapter 107. I don't know if this is your minhag. Many Chassidim say this on Erev Shabbos, chapter Kuf Zayin, which contains 4 times thanks to Hashem. In each of the cases are different types of thanks, in case a person might have been in some way harmed. So you will find a number of times in the Tehillim a phrase about the benefits accrued to the soul. So it says, for instance, Re'evim gam tzameim, they are thirsty, they are hungry and they are thirsty. Nafshom bohem tisatov. I've actually quoted this one here on the screen. Nafshom bohem tisatov in Pasuk Hey of Kuf Zayin. Their soul is weary because they need the food and the drink. Soul is weary? I thought you mean body is weary. So on this explains about Shem Tov that no, your body needs these things because your soul is seeking the nitzuts, the spark which is in these particular objects. Kol eichel tesar nafsham is the same idea. All food is what your soul desires or what your soul wants. Ki isbia nefesh shoykeka is another pasuk test. You have satisfied a thirsty soul. What do you mean a thirsty soul? My soul isn't thirsty. My body is thirsty. Explains about something. No, your body reflects your soul. Your soul is thirsty for the holiness which is in the food or the drink. And that is why your body returns the same thirst. So that's that. The same is true not just in terms of the food that we eat. The same is true in all 3 dimensions, Olam, Shon, and Nefesh, in terms of the place where you are, the time when you do something, and the person who's doing something. Every mitzvah has an impact on you, the thing that you do the mitzvah with, the place that you do the mitzvah with, and the time that you do the mitzvah with. I often say it's like, I think I mentioned this last time, when we were kids, we used to, and it's very cold air outside. As you breathe out, you see your air, like smoke. So you used to pretend we're smoking cigarettes in the air. You blow out and you can see your air. In a sort of imaginary way, when a person walks in the street and says words of Torah, then you spit out the words into the air. And so forever, they stay perched there. So this is across all material objects. Whatever it is you buy, whatever it is you eat, whatever it is you wear, all of these will have the same thing. That what you seek and what you like and what appeals to you is the nitzul teleki, the godly spark which is in that thing. So when you finish elevating those sparks from that watch, I spelled from that watch, either one of two things will happen. If the sparks are gone for good, there's no further use, it will break because the job is done. It could be that you finish your sparks, which are relevant to the source of your soul, but somebody else still has some sparks that he has to elevate or she has to elevate that are still in that watch, so that it will be lost and somebody else is meant to find it and to continue using it for good. This is the remarkable complexity of the world around us, that every single thing has something and some use and some divine reason behind it. There's no, that God did not create a single thing which is of no use at all. You find in the story of Yaakov that if you remember, when he was running away from Lavan, so he went across Mave Yabok, he went across a river, and then he went back several times to bring his goods over the river. And the last time he went there, he met up with the angel of Esav, and there was a big fight until eventually the Yaakov was able to prevail, and he said, so he became called Yisrael, which is to survive and to prevail and be victorious over bad things. So if you look in Rashi there, he said, why did Yaakov go back over the river? He said he left behind pachim ketanim, little utensils. A pach is a jar. What would it be made of? Probably earthenware. What's an earthenware jar cost already? Yaakov was a multimillionaire. He had huge flocks. He was not short of money. When he left Eretz Yisrael, he left penniless. He came back, he has a wife, he has children, and he has a lot of herds. A lot of money. In those days, your wealth was often measured in terms of your herds, because banks and so on were not around. So why did he go back for pachim ketanim? What? Forget him. Go buy some new ones. He went back for the pachim ketanim because a tzaddik knows that everything that he has a divine attribute to it, has a nitzul teleki, which is waiting for you to elevate it and bring it into kedusha. So I can't leave those behind. That's relevant to my neshama. So I have to go back and get them. So it isn't a question of money. It's a question of the nitzul teleki. The Yidden were told they would go out of Egypt with great wealth. What do you think that meant? Just that they'll take with them money? More than that. According to Chassidus, we are taught there were reish pei ches nitzotzin. There were 288 different types of holy sparks that the Jews had to extract from Egypt by the service that they did. And when they finished it, that's when the Gula happened. That's when Mitzrayim ceased to be a country where they could live, and they ran away straight away. Not only that, they were told not to return there again. What difference does it make if you go back there, if you're in a position of strength or power? Is the answer because there's no need to go back there. Why would you live in a place to elevate the holiness that's there to Kedusha? If it's already been done, there's no reason to go back there. Finished. This would be a reason why Jews, one of the reasons given why Jews have always wandered around the world. I have a book of plants somewhere somebody gave me, and one of them is a plant with the leaves that go out of the bowl and they float along here, and they clamber all along your shelf. It's called the wandering Jew. Jews are wandering. So people say it as if, never, we cannot find anywhere to call home. Is the answer nothing to do with it? The reason why Yid wanders is so that he can be able to bring Kedusha and elevate the sparks of Kedusha in that place. And when he's finished that, he'll move on to somewhere else. This is again the concept of Gershon is Gaia. You know, we talk about, let's say, a Gershon is Gaia is Kekotn Shenoilan, a Ger who was Nisgaia, right? Does that term make sense? A Ger who converted, a convert who converted. The phrase doesn't work. If it's a convert, then he doesn't need to convert. He's already converted. Really, it should say Goy Shenis Gaia. But the Rambam doesn't do that. The Rambam uses the phrase Ger Shenis Gaia, and he chose his words carefully. The Rambam wrote a masterpiece of halacha, unparalleled to this day. So what does it mean, Ger Shenis Gaia? Explains in Sifrei Chasidus and back before that in Savory of Darizal, that the Ger was, there's three types of people. There's a Jew, there's a non-Jew, and there's a Ger. A Goy is a Mizgaya. A Ger is Mizgaya. A Ger is a Jew who was born as a non-Jew. That means he has a nitzut tzedik, he has a certain holiness there, but for some reason, which is known only to the good Lord, he got born as a non-Jew. So therefore, he's always searching to find his way back until he goes through the Giyur and he becomes a Jew. For whatever reason God has. As perhaps buying the idea that when a person first approaches a Beis Din and says, I'm interested in converting. You know, many people I get coming through, ringing me up, sending me emails, Rabbi, I'm interested in Judaism. So why? I want to be closer to God. So why are you now? Why do you need to convert? What's wrong with you the way you are? Well, I want to see the light. I want to get closer. So you can do that as a non-Jew. You don't have to become. And most of the time, they sort of drift away. But the one that you push away and keeps coming back and doesn't let go, that starts you thinking maybe that's the Ger. That's the one who can't let go. They have to find their way back to Yiddishkeit. They have to go through the process of converting for whatever reason Hashem has, because they have something inside them that's seeking to go back to the source. The Kedusha, the Nitzos, is going back to become part of the Shekhinah. Now, what happens when it goes wrong? What happens when it goes wrong? When we fail. When the Kedusha, the Nitzos, does not get elevated. So something which is holy does not become holy. It sinks. Where does it go? That, I'm finishing in 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Then we end up with negative events. Do you know what the Mishnah says about missing Krishma? It says that if you miss to say Krishma, it's a mistake which you can never correct. Really? I thought I could think of bigger mistakes. You know, how about adultery? How about a mamzer? You know, there's lots of sins out there. Why would you pick missing the Krishma? There's a fundamental difference. When a person does something wrong, the energy that's gone into doing the wrong went somewhere. There was energy there, but it went in the wrong direction. That always means there's a possibility that we can redirect it in the right direction. And if you think this is it's not at all strange, because it says in the Gemara, it says in Yuma, and in many places quoted, that if a person does proper teshuva, that his deliberate sins become mitzvahs. So how can you do that? He sinned. He said, yeah, but sinning was a certain energy, did something. They did it wrong. So take the energy, the nitzuts, bring it back out from the wrong end and put it back into Kedusha, you end up with a mitzvah. Masha'aken, if you listen out Shema, you haven't done anything. So if you do teshuvah, so you disobey God's commandment, fine, we'll forgive you. But I haven't got any mitzvah here. There's nothing here to turn into a mitzvah. So that's gone. That's missed for good. That's the value of doing rather than not doing. If God would not have created the world, nobody would drive to shul on Shabbos. But he did create the world, telling you that it's more important what you do than what you don't do. If a person does 20 Averis in a day, one mitzvah, the day's still worth it, because the mitzvahs are eternal. And the Averis are not eternal. The Catholics think they are. In Judaism, there's no such thing as eternal evil. Evil cannot, by definition, be eternal. At some point, it will get erased, and you'll come back to Kedusha. So this is the concept of something which has ended up, the Nitzvahs got lost, comes back to Kedusha. Then you have extra Kedusha. Now we come back to the original question, fast days. What happened fast days? We read a few weeks ago that the Meraglim came back and gave a bad report about Eretz Yisrael on the fast day. So it wasn't a fast day, it was the 9th of Av. And the Eibishter made a note in his calendar of that night. He says, you cried for nothing, for no reason. I'll give you a reason to cry. In other words, there was activity there, but it went the wrong way. It was crying for the wrong things. So it ended up that years later, we end up crying for the Beis Hamikdash. But imagine we correct the reasons for why that we ended up crying. We get it right, and Mashiach comes. We got all that negative energy, turns back into Kedusha. What do we end up with? We end up with a Yom Tov. Now it makes sense why fast days will be turned into holidays. If it goes back to regular days, what happened to the Nitzvot of Kedusha that was there? So this is the sparks of holiness, which is in terms of the day that were once there and got used in the wrong way. The crying was for the wrong things, and therefore it became a fast day. But very soon Mashiach will come, and then we will be zeicher to have all the wrong things be put right, and then Mashiach will be able to bring the people back, including the Nifteres, who I mentioned earlier. We'll all be able to come back to the Kitzav Ran and Sheikh Ne'ofa, and together we will be able to go towards Mashiach Tzidkenu, and all these days and all that negative energy will be turned into positive energy. So that's my end. I wish you all a very
okay,
good,
Kruiskoyer, and it was very interesting, and we hope to see you after the holidays. We'll be in contact with you.
Yeah. Where we?
No, you have to switch up.
What do I do here?
I don't know what you have to do. Nothing. To switch out of to because it's now share in Dutch. I don't think
stop
so.
sharing.
I don't think so. Yeah, you can understand it.
I stopped sharing. Okay, I will leave now.
You shouldn't stop sharing, Rabbi Golomb.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Shalom Aleichem.
Aleichem shalom.
I say you shouldn't stop sharing, but stop sharing the screen.
Stop sharing the screen, yeah. No screams you shouldn't share. Only laughter, no screams.
Amen, amen.
Okay, but I have to go see my daughter. She's going off, so I will say goodbye.
Okay.
Paul, thank you for having me. Thank you all for listening to me. And it's a Shem. Next time when it's convenient, send me an email. And
I sent you an email. Okay, thank you. Bye.
All the best. Bye.
All the best.
Okay.